This video is coming very late, about 2 weeks late. Well, I mean, 13 days, but who's counting? And so it's not as polished as it was back then. It's been 13 days since I read this stuff that I'm going to be talking about today, but I think I've still got it mostly under control, and what I don't have under control, he's got under control. So let's go on. Now, one of my favorite lectures that I remember back at BYU is in Honors P200, which several of the friends here on Facebook were in. It was a great class, and I still think it's really interesting that I keep in touch with them so much. And I was thinking of you today and talking about you today, actually, with a coworker, irrespective of this video, because I was picking some delicious grapes off a vine on campus and eating them, and I used to pick plums off the trees around the mazer, and it was like in a 200 kind of thing. Anyway, we had a visiting professor one day. It was our teacher, Rebecca Walker Clark's dad, Steve Walker, came and did a lecture on looking at the ways literature does things. And one of the things he used the story of Abraham and Isaac to illustrate an important point, that the story of Abraham and Isaac tells a lot, but perhaps one of the most important things of the story of Isaac and Abraham is what isn't told. There is nothing in that story about Sarah or Sarai, whichever name you want to use for her. And Abraham has another son. He has Ishmael. He knows that Ishmael is going to have 12 sons, or 12 tribes or whatever, and it's going to go on. There's going to be all this great thing. He knows he's going to have posterity, endless posterity, because of Ishmael. So even if he has to kill Isaac, he's still going to have posterity that lives forever. Sarah doesn't have that promise. And Professor Walker brought up that, we don't know how Sarah took this. We don't know if Sarah knew. I think he was of the opinion that Sarah probably knew, but that she was the one who was really exercising faith in the Lord saving her son, because she's the one who had to exercise the most faith in the whole process. And that's what people miss a lot. It's true. These women aren't mentioned in the scriptures very often. In the Hebrew Bible, in the New Testament, in the Book of Mormon, there aren't a lot of women. But the women that are in there are almost entirely, with a couple exceptions, better than the men who are in there. Even the bad women are more competent, more capable, and in all non-moral ways, better than the men are. So that's something that's really interesting to note. And so that's why when there are periods where there aren't any women mentioned, it does get kind of weird, and why that's normally when you get the boring history stuff, because when stuff actually happens, women are normally involved. Adam and Eve is an excellent example. So often in Genesis especially, women fix the mistakes that the men make. It's not the other way around, like we often look at it. Eve is the one who understands that to move on and progress, they have to eat the apple. Sarai's the one who rejoices. Abraham's the one that laughs first. And you look at the way the Hebrew is conjugated. Sometimes it's the same, sometimes it's different. Whatever. Rebecca is the one who makes sure that the right son gets the birthright and the patriarchal blessing. And it's really interesting that in that story with Isaac and Rebecca, I think that's right, yeah, she's doing something that Esau already knows needs to be done. Esau even tells his father that he sold the birthright to his brother, but he was still trying to trick his dad into giving it to him when he knew he didn't deserve it. It's kind of that's kind of a big deal. You see the women doing Jacob's wives doing things which are very, devious is the wrong word, but very important. You see them having little, drama fights between them, but they are actively involved in what's going on. There is the sad case of Dinah. There's the sad case of Lot's daughters, but then they were very active in doing what they did. Sometimes we get just wives. There's the whole period of 2,000-ish years. We're dealing with the lines between mythology, legend, and truth here, so time spans are weird. But from Eve to Sarah, Egyptus is the only woman whose name we know in the biblical record, as far as I can remember. And that's really interesting. Noah's wife is just Noah's wife. Lot's wife is even just Lot's wife. We get the names of one of Abraham's other sisters or cousins comes up, and she's actually really important, but I can't remember that narrative. It might be Milcah. But whoever it is, it's important that somebody identifies himself not by his father's name, but by his mother's name. And that's kind of cool, because that's not what we think. But Hagar is an active participant in the story. Lot's wife plays a role. It's a sad role. It teaches us a point, but she's somebody who's actually willing to do something, whereas Lot kind of is just more of a reactor. I talked about Rebecca, and how she's the one who ensures that the Lord's plan actually works the way it's supposed to, because her husband is too old and or foolish and or stubborn to do what he knows is right, what the kids know is right. Rachel, there's the beauty in the names of her sons, of course, Joseph and Benjamin, and what their names mean. There's even some importance in, I think, the fact that Jacob gets the name he gets at the very beginning. It's a good name. I like it. And Rachel, I feel bad for Rachel. I feel bad for Leah and for Rachel, and I could do a whole video just on the four women, and maybe I will. So let's move on. Right? The other one I want to go into today is Potiphar's wife, because I already passed the two. There's something we don't talk about with Potiphar's wife very often, and that is in the Hebrew. Let's go to chapter 39 of Genesis. I hate that I'm doing it on a computer instead of on actual scriptures, but that's the way it is sometimes. If you look at the Hebrew, in the King James Version, it says, where is it? We need to go. It's not all there in chapter 39 of Genesis. We're actually going to go to chapter 37. Chapter 37, verse 36. Chapter 38 has another woman's story that we'll cover on its own, but I want to cover Potiphar's wife in conjunction with the other women, just because I think she gets a bum deal. No, I should cover her with Tamar. She's a good foil for Tamar. Okay, I'll do them both now. All right, so Eve makes sure that the plan happens the way it happens at all, right? Rachel makes sure that the birthright goes on to the right person. Rebecca makes sure the birthright goes to the right person. After Esau had lost the birthright in multiple ways, not just from selling it. He'd already lost it by the time he sold it. Sarai there's the whole Hagar incident, there's Hagar in general, and then we get to the Midianites and Potiphar. And we get to set up a great contrast in chapter 38 to verse 39. In chapter 37, verse 36, we have Potiphar, who is an officer of Pharaoh's and captain of the guard. Now, that's not what it actually says. That's what the King James Version says. But if we go to, let me see if I can pull up Young's literal. I should have done this in advance. I should have just stopped this video a bit ago. And, well, you're getting a long video since it's been a long time. Alrighty, here we go. Yeah. If we go to Young's literal translation, we have, and the Midianites have sold him unto Egypt to Potiphar, a eunuch of Pharaoh. That's right. Potiphar is an officer, but Potiphar, according to the Hebrew, is a eunuch. Isn't that nice? Some translations call him the captain, the King James, and most English translations call him the captain of the guard. The Young's literal calls him the captain of the slaughtermen or the executioners. Some say it's actually he's one of the household officers. He's not the head of the executioners. If he is the head of the executioners, it makes it very interesting that he doesn't kill Joseph. He puts him into prison. So that is interesting. Others say it's more the slaughterers, like the one who takes care of all the food for the Pharaoh's house, which is going to be very important when Joseph is in prison. So Potiphar's wife might have been the wife of a eunuch, which makes her actions, if not more justifiable in the story, a little bit more understandable maybe. And it also could explain why Potiphar is so enraged by it, but at the same time he doesn't, if he is the chief of the, executioners, I'd really think he would try to kill Joseph, but he doesn't. So that's one thing that's really interesting. The other thing that's interesting is, in the midst of that, we go, there's this eunuch guy who has a wife, and we have the story of Tamar in the middle. Now, this Tamar, there are other Tamars. One of the Tamars is really, really terribly sad story, and I hate it so much. This Tamar means date, as in the date palm, and it is one of my favorite stories because it really is a time when the woman does the right thing and the guy really screws things up, as we see a lot before. I'll have to go in another video into the geopolitics of Jacob's kids, but suffice it to say, the kids, much like their great uncle, or just normal uncle, they're just normal Uncle Esau, really liked ruining the birthright. Reuben slept with his mother and his stepmom, with Bilhah, one of the maids, and lost the birthright that way. Levi and Simeon lost the birthright by pursuing and avenging the gentleman who, the whole Dinah situation. And then it falls to Judah, as he gets one of the birthright blessings as the eldest worthy son of the first wife, but a lot of the birthright does go to the first son of the second wife for other reasons. It's weird. Anyway, Judah has 3 sons by a Canaanite woman. He shouldn't have married a Canaanite woman. This is against the rules, but he does it anyway. And he has 3 sons, and the eldest son, Er, is married to a woman named Tamar. Now, Er dies before he and Tamar have any children. So, of course, Tamar is, given... Well, it's really not that Tamar is given to the brother. It's more that the other brother is given to Tamar to raise up seed unto his brother. This brother's not willing to handle the responsibility, so he has sex with her, he spills it on the ground, pulls out before, and then he is killed by the Lord for doing things. And then the third son, I feel like I've done a video about this before, Shelah, Judah says he's too young, he won't give her to Tamar. Long story short, Tamar dresses up like a harlot, and she seduces Judah. Seduces is the wrong word, because Judah seems to be the parent acting participant in it. She just dresses up like a harlot. She doesn't even dress up like a harlot. This is really important. She doesn't even dress up like a harlot. Like, this is not like, she is not out there displaying her wares. It's only that Judah saw her and thought her to be a harlot because she had covered her face. And it's really, the 38 is really interesting. And he says he'll pay her a kid, and in the process he waits and he gives her his staff and his staff and his signet ring, and she gets pregnant, and long story short, Judah is exposed as a philanderer and a cheater, and proves that Tamar was right all along, and instead of having the son of the Canaanite woman be the one who continues the rulingness of this house, it's going to be through Tamar and Judah, with the right genealogy family, even though he's not her wife. And this is where it gets confusing, because her children, Pharez specifically, and the other child is Zara, but Pharez becomes the father or great-grandfather of David and all that, and that goes in later into Corinthians. So we contrast that. Tamar seduces is the wrong word. We need a better word than seduces for what happens here. Tamar has sex with Judah, who is not her husband, because Judah is keeping her husband from her, and Potiphar's wife tries to have sex with Joseph because castration is keeping her husband from her. And it's such an interesting thing that these two women are kind of sort of doing the same thing. But because of the circumstances and the context, I always talk about context. So important. One of them is doing the righteous thing and one of them isn't. And that's why I think it's really, we need to be very, very careful when we judge others, because at first glance, even at lots of glances, it looks like everything is wrong in the Tamar story, and that you can set up Judah as a great foil for Joseph, and that Judah does it, but Joseph doesn't, especially when Potiphar's wife is throwing herself at Joseph and Tamar isn't throwing herself at Judah. But in the end, it's only through what Tamar does that the whole plan works out in the end. And it's only through the results of what Potiphar's wife does that the whole thing works out in the end, too. So, that's today's lesson. Women are so important in so many ways. And God's plan, for better or for worse, couldn't happen without women in more than one way. So, that's all. This was long. Bye!